What's up everyone? Zach Evans here again, and today we're going to talk about what separates good piano players from great piano players. I've had over 100 students, and this is what separates the people whose learning curves are like this and the people who really ramp it up and get their learning curves like this, making fast progress. All right, I've had my coffee, I'm all jacked up, ready to go. Let's get started. All right, so there's two things today that I'm gonna talk about that really separate the people who learn like this and the people who learn like this. Obviously, you wanna be in the second category. First thing is being very specific in your practice sessions. Now, to explain this, I wanna use kind of an analogy. I ran track in college, and don't worry, I'll relate this to piano in a second, but I ran track, and the biggest difference from being a high school track athlete and a college track athlete were how specific our workouts are. In high school, we'd go into the weight room. Our coach would be like, all right, go lift. So, we'd go in there. All right, let's do, I'll do bicep curls. 20s, sure. Squats, yeah, throw some plates on there. We do kind of just random exercises. When I got to college, it was very specific. It was literally scientific. They would say, okay, your squat max is 350 pounds. Today we're gonna do 80% of your max weight. We're gonna do 3 sets of 5 reps. Each rep is gonna be 3 seconds down, 1 second up. You're gonna take a minute and a half between sets. We would literally time our rest. It's very scientific. That's what separates high school athletes from college athletes. Piano is the exact same way. When you're learning as a kid, they kind of just say, oh yeah, practice your scales, practice your pieces, right? In college, it's very detailed. You go when you say, okay, first 10 minutes, I'm working on technique. First 3 minutes, I'm doing scales. I'm gonna work metronome ramp up and systematically ramp it up from 60 BPM to 100 BPM. Boom, then I'm working finger drill. I'm gonna spend 3 minutes on finger drill. I'm gonna run each rhythm 4 times, blah, blah, blah. That's how your practice sessions should look. And then even when you get into your pieces, it's like, okay, my piece, I'm spending 15 minutes on section A. I'm gonna do hands separate. I'm gonna work right hand through the metronome ramp up. I'm gonna work left hand through rhythms. Boom, next 15 minutes, section B. Literally have a stopwatch, or a kitchen timer or something. Literally time it and don't stop till you hit that 15 minutes. The details is what makes you go from this to this. Because one of the most important things I realized is something called, I call it results per minute of practice time. Here's what I want you to think about. Let's say you have person A, right? Person A is practicing, and let's say they're kind of sloppy with their practice, but they're still practicing, they're still making some progress. Let's say they hit, for every minute they practice, they gain 1%. And these are arbitrary numbers, right? For every minute they practice, they gain 1%. Let's say person B practices really efficiently. For every minute he practices, he gains 3%. He's very focused. He's working on small sections, hand separate, everything. Person A, it's only a difference between 1 and 3%, but if you do that over a whole practice session, it grows a lot. If you do that over a whole month, over a whole year, the difference, it compounds on itself, it gets bigger. And on top of that, you have to think from a motivational standpoint. If you're making slow progress, it gets really frustrating, it gets really hard to learn, and you're sitting there and you're like, does this even work? Am I doing this right? And you're not gonna practice anymore. You might even skip practice sessions, stuff like that. Think about if you're really, really efficient. Now you're learning really fast. Now you start getting excited about practicing. Now you start saying, man, I'm making so much progress. You start practicing extra. You start adding practice to sessions. You start, instead of practicing 4 days a week, you start practicing 6 days a week. You start practicing twice a day sometimes. And that's when your level starts really skyrocketing. You have to create these positive motivation loops where you're having success. That gets you motivated, so you practice even more, which leads to more success. That's how you really ramp up your practice sessions. So being very specific in your practice sessions is killer. It's huge. If you want the exact nuts and bolts, the details, I have a goal setting lesson in my free piano course, Become a Piano Superhuman. You can sign up below if you want that. All right, second biggest thing is technique. Now, this is kind of like a little bit of a controversial one. If you ask a lot of piano teachers what's the most important aspect of playing, a lot of them will say playing expressively, being able to play with emotion. I agree, but here's my caveat. Okay, once you're good at piano, once you have solid technique, I do think playing expressively is the most important part. That's what separates, that's what's really important. But beginner to intermediate, you have to realize if you don't have that technique, you can't play expressively, because if your fingers are fumbling around the keys, if you don't feel confident on the keys, Even like if you know exactly how you want to play it in your mind and you know how to be expressive, you can't translate it to the keyboard. So my thing is, as a beginner or intermediate piano player, technique is huge. And you know, it was kind of the way I was brought up too. My piano professor in college, he literally said the first 10 minutes of your practice session, every single time needs to be technique, scales, finger drills, arpeggios, stuff like that, because it's the most important starting off. He literally said, he's like, Zach, you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, and you do your scales. He literally said that. And like, he said that probably like 3 or 4 times to me over the course of my piano career. And I really think technique is that it's the first bottleneck. Here's another reason why it's important. A lot of people think they're bad at something else when really their technique needs work. What I mean by that, let's say you're trying to learn how to sight read. And let's say even mentally, you get the piece and you know what note to hit, but your fingers are still sloppy. They're not used to where the notes are at the key. You don't have that confident, that at-home feeling on the keys. And if you don't have that at-home feeling on the keys, even if mentally you know where the next note is, you're not going to be able to make your fingers do it. So you might think, oh, I'm really bad at sight reading, when really the bottleneck is your technique. And if you can get your technique good and open up that bottleneck, all of a sudden, now you'll get new bottlenecks of like sight reading, playing by ear, all this stuff. But if you don't have that technique, a lot of this stuff you can't even truly work on until you have that technique rock solid. So I really suggest take that first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, choose an interval, everyday technique, scales and finger drill, right? You can go into more stuff than that if you want, but make sure you do your scales, make sure you do the finger drill. If you want the nuts and bolts on that, that's also my free piano course, Become a Piano Superhuman. You can sign up below and that'll give you the step-by-step, okay, what do I actually do? I sit down at the piano, how do I actually work on technique? It'll give you the more detailed version of it. All right, that's all I got for you today. Remember the 2 biggest things, set specific practice goals and work on your technique every day. That's all I got for you. Thanks a lot for watching. Peace out and happy practicing.